Hello, 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 everyone. So good to see you all. Nico says hello. Nova's down on the ground. She says hello as well.
Oh, I love that kid. Look at those feet.
Itty
Oh,
bitty little feet. He's a potato.
I love
He's a
potatoes.
he's a he's a potato with toothpicks for legs.
Love a king.
All right. So put in the chat where you guys are zooming in from. I don't even remember. Where am I? Iowa City. Iowa City, Chicago, Kansas, Mexico, Austin, South Philly, Gill, Southern Illinois, Merida again, Los Angeles, Austin. Awesome, awesome. Springfield, New Jersey. There's a Springfield in every state. I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, and that is a uh but not South Park. The Simpsons. They're from Springfield, and the joke is that you don't know which one because there's one in every state. All right, so we'll jump right in. I am having slideshow issues. That's why we're a couple minutes late letting you in, so it won't be pretty. You're just going to see the stuff on the side. I can't figure out how to make that go away. And actually, before we jump in, we'll do so if you're new to Legal Queer and Eggs, I've met a bunch of people. We've done 12 stops so far on the Caravan of Hope. Yesterday in Iowa City was our 12th stop. We have 7 more to go, including Philly. So we're on our way from Iowa City to Chicago, from Chicago to Columbus, from Columbus to Pittsburgh, um, and then Wellsboro, and then Philadelphia. So we have a few more left to go, but I want to do some shares. Just anyone who has anything. Oh, I just saw someone that I met in Albuquerque who joined. So yeah, so along the way, we've been sharing about LQA. I would say one of the biggest differences, before I jump into that, think about your shares. So if anyone wants to share anything that they are grateful or proud of, because as we know, if you've been to many of these LQAs before, they're updates on the laws and what's going on politically, and it's not often happy. And so I've decided that we absolutely must start these hours off with some sort of gratitude, or something that you're proud of. Those can be the same thing. Um, for me, I am thankful for all of my existing clients within Giampolo Law Group currently that we're actively serving, who have graciously allowed me to do the Caravan of Hope, right? Like I took off the entire month of March to do this. And so in January, February, leading right up until my departure on March 1st, I was actively working with people and I said, I'm sorry, I'll see you in April. Only one person got upset. And I just kind of laughed. I was like, clearly, we were never meant to work together because if you're literally upset with me right now based on what I'm doing, then I really would rather not work with you. So, but out of all of my clients, um, everyone has just been so gracious. I don't have an out of office. I just say that my replies are on gay time. And everybody loves to see that with a little rainbow next to it. And really truly, so I'm grateful for my clients and I'm proud of the Caravan of Hope team. So much and so many people go into allowing me to do what I do. And, from literally the woman driving the RV, I would not be able to drive this 32-foot thing cross country. So literally from the woman driving it, to Jody, who takes care of all things on the day of when we're getting ready, to printing out the name change packets, to coordinating with the volunteers, the location that's hosting us, to everyone back home, Jess Grisafi and Macklin handling social media. And and doing all of the legal research because the laws are changing. The laws changed while we were on the road in Oklahoma, and it made it so that we literally couldn't do gender marker changes. And we saw the news on the day of, and it changed everything that we could do on that day. So while I was actively in a service day, volunteers back home were changing the Google Doc around what we could do the following day, right? I literally would not have had the time in a day in order to real time have made those updates. So truly, truly proud of the entire Caravan of Hope team. So anyone have anything that they're grateful for or proud of? Come on, there's 36 people on here. Jen, I'm going to pick on you if nobody raises their hand, so. Grateful. Oh, there's some in the chat. Hold on one second. Yeah, and feel free to put them in the chat if you don't feel comfortable sharing out loud. I reply in gay time. Yes, exactly. Just add a little rainbow. Grateful for my partner and her wonderful spirit. We're getting married in May. Congratulations. And I saw Gary, yep, earlier above. Grateful for my 35 years with my husband. You guys are awesome. Second to grateful for awesome husband, Ted. All right. So we'll jump in. I wanted to give a Caravan of Hope update. I kind of did with, oh, Phyllis, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I'm just grateful for like the information that you all have been providing. But also good news from Tennessee. Bostic and Oregon has been deferred until February of next year. So that even though it's not completely gone, that's just a relief for this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in Tennessee was one of the most interesting states. We were in Memphis that for me personally, just as a human experience, getting out into the town and talking to folks. And I took two Ubers while I was there and just got into conversation with both Uber drivers. And, oh, what are you doing here? Because they picked me up from hotels and, they're like, you're visiting. Have you ever been? And very quickly got into the slate of hate. My one driver, this big burly guy, and we start talking, and I'm here for the Caravan of Hope, my nonprofit. We provide pro bono legal services to the LGBTQ community. And he's like, oh, everybody's fine with the LGBTQ community here. And I was like, really? And I was like, we call it the state of hate, and he was like, really? Why? And then he starts quoting Bible verses at me and talking about God and all of these things. And so then I, replied to that. I was like, well, I don't believe in a God per se, but I do believe in energy, and energetically that this country is very, is vibrating very low. And he was talking about Trump and karma and plagues and locusts and all of these things. And I just sort of, correlated that to, Trump is one as if I had to say the energy that he vibrates at is that of shame and guilt. And those are the two lowest vibrational feelings that a human can have. It doesn't get any lower than that as far as hurts. Shame is worse than guilt because guilt is you're guilty about something that you've done, whereas shame is you are wrong. So guilt is I've done something wrong, and shame is I am wrong. And so there's nothing more vibrationally lower than that. And after I said that and sort of my take on energy versus God and all of the things, he was like, can I just share with you that I'm part of that community? And he sort of like turned around. I was like, huh? And he's like, I've been married for 7 years to my husband. Now he couldn't even say LGBTQ plus, right? I'm just part of that community, quoting Bible verses at me. I thought this was going to be like, a potentially dangerous Uber ride, and I'd get a 0 rating and be kicked out of the Uber. By the end of it, he got out of his car. We hugged. He's following me on Instagram. Hey, Ted. If you're, yeah, I told him about this. I don't know if you're watching, but and he kind of teared up at one point, and he was like, "I don't know anything about what you're talking about." And I've been gay for 23 years. I was like, well, I mean, he was like in his 50s. I'm like, you've probably been gay longer than that, but and it was just, and then so with this other Uber driver, she's a black woman, straight black woman, but had been discriminated against and fired and she was like, for not for being black, for being a woman. Right. And just like our whole conversation, again, she thought Tennessee was she's like, I'm fine with the QF folks. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, I see them at Starbucks, and I wave and she's like, totally fine with me. And I was like, well, sometimes there's a difference between the government. I lived in Tanzania where it's illegal to be gay, and yet I've never been more welcomed by a people. Right. And so I said, sometimes there's a difference between folks and the government. I said, I told them about the slate, told her about the slate of hate. She did Google it when we pulled over as well. And she was shocked about Tennessee and the state of the laws and how bad it was for LGBTQ folks. And it just, for a lot of us, we don't have these conversations when we're taking an Uber in our city because we're not as curious. Right? We're not hopping in an Uber looking around with the eyes of someone who doesn't know where they are. And likewise, the Uber drivers were more curious about me because they picked me up from a hotel, right? When I'm in Philly and I just get picked up, they're not asking me where I'm from and all the things. But they were both really, really eye-opening. I got that woman's email address and I already referred her to an employment discrimination attorney in Memphis, and she's going to open up an EEOC claim. But both of those conversations started out what I deemed to be poor, and I almost didn't continue them. And that one ended in a hug and a new follower and a new LQA member, and another ended, with just more understanding, if you will, from a straight ally. And so, all to say, yes, Tennessee has deferred the slate of hate until next year. By no means out of the woodworks. There's a political reason why they deferred it. They think they're going to have more, what's the word? Just more people behind it. I'm blanking on the political word, next year. And so it was deferred. But the slate of hate did come up a lot while I was in Memphis, Tennessee, both by people. It was one of the states we did the most LGBTQ estate planning in. And a lot of folks, mention that. They're like, oh, Burgerfell could go away in our state. And even if it goes away nationally, it's definitely going to go away here. And so it was definitely on the minds of the Tennessee folks that were coming to the Caravan of Hope. Jimmy, go ahead. Oh, you just accidentally raised your Okay. Let's see if there are any more shares in the chat. Grateful you were able to. Yes. Aw, we took a selfie, CA, for you, and I forgot to send it to you. So, um, and then Tennessee. Yes, yes. The very tip of Tennessee. I was shocked at how large, all the different areas within. Vanderbilt reinforces the idea that propaganda is working. Pleasure to meet. Oh, hi, Phyllis. Pleasure to meet you as well. And yes, we need to have more conversations with folks that are different than us. I lived in Arizona. I lived in Phoenix for a year, and I made it my goal to have as many conversations with folks in Starbucks that I met as possible. All right. So, agenda for today, as always, stay muted, unless you raise your hand, unless it's accidental like Jimmy. And then please be respectful. Don't have to tell us that, but always like to just say it to be top of mind. And then Caravan of Hope updates. We just did legal and political updates. The depressing part, we'll get into that. And then April 7th, we'll be back on our sort of normal LQA. Well, we kept with our schedule, but, and also at the end, if anyone wants to share, the last LQA was the first time we did a completely different format. And I'm curious of those who are on today, who are also on for March 24th's interview panel discussion with Jen and Alexander Stefanini. I'm curious if you liked that generally as a different form of an LQA and bringing in more people and just having interview styles and less information per se. All right, so the rest of the LQA is going to be just about political updates, very much news oriented. Boom, boom. This is what's been going on for the month that I haven't really, been making posts about daily legal developments. And so first and foremost, and a lot of these, honestly, while they come into my inbox based on different news feeds that I get, I did not see the majority of what I'm going to talk to you about in my social media stream. Like they just weren't discussed. And I'm going to skip over Kansas and what happened in Kansas because everybody knows what happened in Kansas. I do talk about it tangentially. So if you don't know, I will talk about it. But a lot of folks don't know about this one. The Supreme Court handed down their fifth massively anti-trans legislation in the last 12 months. And the reason most people aren't talking about it, it was decided yet again on the shadow docket. So there was no big, news update, if you will, about it, nor was there oral arguments. We'll talk about what the shadow docket is, but this basically allows for forced outing in schools in California. So for parents who wish for the forcible outing of their children in California. And the full impact, I mean, this just happened in March. The full impact of this is not known, but California does have prohibition on forced outings. And so one of the first things, since this is specific, the case was specific to California and filed in California, the very first impacts will be in California, but it's a Supreme Court case, so the impact will be felt nationwide. Now, this opinion is absolutely insane. I had to take a screenshot because you're going to think that it's like incorrect. This now permits or requires any employee in California, statewide only system, permits or requires an employee from misleading the parent or guardian of a minor child in the education system of their child's gender presentation at school, whether by directly lying to the parent, preventing the parent from accessing educational records, using a different set of preferred pronouns, names when speaking to the parents. Permit or require any employee in California to use a name. Permit or require the employee to use a name or pronoun different from what the child wants. Requires them to use a name different than what the child wants. Just absolutely insane. So now what is the shadow docket? The shadow docket refers to the Supreme Court's clandestine, if you will, docket, where they can issue decisions that have the impact of every single other SCOTUS decision, the same precedent, but without full briefings. So nobody has to submit a brief. There's no oral argument, and there's no detailed explanation from the court as to why they've decided what they've decided. It was created for urgent matters, but now is being used clearly for non-urgent matters. So the cases get fast-tracked, no public hearings, no detailed briefings, and a signed opinion with just a signed order. And then obviously the controversy around it is that critics argue that the shadow docket is being misused for non-urgent matters, and as a result, the cases lack complete transparency, or the decisions around the case lack complete transparency. The rulings have the exact same significant impact on that any other Supreme Court case would. They've used it predominantly in LGBTQ cases, immigration cases, abortion cases, cases that they don't want mutiny, in my opinion, from the masses. And they're using the Supreme Court shadow docket as a way around public uproar or opinion on it. Recent shadow docket cases that a lot of folks aren't aware of. The transgender military ban went into effect from the shadow docket. The Pentagon, as a result, has discharged 15,000 active service military folks. Idaho's youth gender-affirming care, the standing case on it, Labrador v. Poe. The case, it again dealt with Idaho, but had nationwide impact on youth gender-affirming care. And I'll show you the impact later that this case ended up having on the shadow docket. Most trans adolescents in Idaho halted overnight pending appeal, but then it went into effect nationwide. Maine legislature censures a speech case where a lawmaker was saying homophobic things and outed a transgender teen on a social media post. And it was a First Amendment case that, again, went up to the Supreme Court, and it was fast-tracked through the shadow docket, and nothing happened to the Maine legislature. And so is the use of the shadow docket concerning? Absolutely. Lena Kagan and obviously the other Supreme Court justices are, all concerned with the cases that ultimately come out and that are even fast-tracked. They have to vote on whether or not it's shadow docket material. And Kagan has gone on the record in one of the shadow docket opinions and saying that this approach is the new way that they're using the shadow docket is unreasoned, inconsistent, and impossible to defend. It becomes Supreme Court precedent. No more different than any other Supreme Court case. Critics argue it shifts power to the court with zero transparency. So we keep saying we don't want a political Supreme Court. We don't want to politicize the positions, that the Supreme Court should be the most objective out of our three branches of government, but that this really gives it some political power because it gets to decide what it fast tracks, what it decides in the shadows. And so many of them, like I said, are LGBTQ specific. Okay. So from that Idaho shadow docket case in the last 3 months, and you may have seen this in the news one by one. I've been seeing it one by one. This morning was the first time that I counted how many major hospital systems have closed down. From LA's Children's Hospital. That is up there with CHOP here in Philadelphia, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Boston's, LA's CHOP. I guess it's not called CHOP, but CHLA. Their version of it was also in the lawsuit. Rady's is big in San Diego, closed its gender-affirming care program, and the California AG sued. Operations. The Attorney General of California sued Rady and said, you can't shut down. And there was a temporary injunction preventing Rady from shutting down completely overnight, leaving all of these minors with zero access to gender-affirming care. But it's a federal funding issue. The Trump administration has said that they're not going to fund these places, but you have NYU. And again, the AG, Letitia James, sent a demand letter. She hasn't sued yet, like Rob has in California. So we're still waiting to hear what NYU is going to say as to the demand letter. But demand letters are something that you do as a courtesy prior to filing a lawsuit. So I would think that the AG of New York would not throw a punch that she isn't willing to follow up with a total knockout, right? That's my take on litigation is I don't send demand letters unless I fully intend on following with a lawsuit. So we will see. And then we have the Children's Hospital in DC, Richmond, Connecticut, 2 in Connecticut. So there are no more institutions in Connecticut providing gender-affirming care. Folks, this is massive. This is massive. We know the uptick and uptick makes it sound sort of minuscule, but the drastic increase in youth suicide when kids don't have access to gender-affirming care. And I met just yesterday a grandmother in Iowa City, a grandma who came in for her 14-year-old granddaughter, Olivia, born Oliver. The mom is depressed, suicidal herself, just dealing with the ripple effect of having a trans daughter. But they are having to go to Minnesota. Fly to Minnesota from here in Iowa City. They have the means to do so. Very few people have the money to go outside of a state, and their health insurance within the state of Iowa is not covering it because it's not within their network. Clearly, they're flying to another state in order to get Olivia. So it is completely self-funded, and they're having to go to another state in order for Olivia at 14 to get gender-affirming care. And the mom can barely get out of bed. The grandma came to the Caravan of Hope because her daughter couldn't even get out of bed. So you have the ripple effect of how this is all impacting a family. So 0 institutions left in Connecticut, Penn State folded, and then Children's Hospital of LA, which is really shocking, folded. So these are 100% ceased. These have halted. So they haven't closed operations. They have just stopped operations for now, temporarily, pending either litigation or funding issues, but they haven't closed their doors yet. So we have both places in all of Colorado. So all of Colorado would go away as a state. So you have the Children's Hospital of Colorado and then Denver Health. And then we have Norfolk, VA, and then Seattle. These are massively blue states, people, right? We have Denver, we have Seattle. Virginia's like not massively blue, but we have 2 in California. Penn State, which is the only other one in Penn State is CHOP in Philadelphia. We have all of Connecticut. We have NYU. It's the ripple effect is huge. All from that one case in the shadow docket to come full circle and the real life implications of what the shadow docket can do. So right after Kansas's revoking of 1,500 licenses, the very next, few days later, no one's talking about it, but Missouri advanced 3 anti-trans bathroom bills in one night, overnight. Literally started around 10 o'clock at night. And we have 3 bills, HB 2536, 2075, 1893. 2536 would say that Missouri only recognizes male-female, effectively overnight, stripping intersex, transgender, diverse folks from recognition by the state. And I've talked about the genocide that we're in the midst of against trans and gender diverse folks. If a group of people doesn't exist, then it's impossible to argue that a law is unconstitutional or invalid against them because the state doesn't even recognize the plaintiff. Okay, so super, super important to see and just, again, call out what's happening with these bills. I feel like people are their eyes are starting to glaze over when they see a headline of, oh, one more bathroom bill, right? And that it's not a big deal. But in these bathroom bills are embedded the very legal recognition of a group of people. I worked in genocide. When I started out as a international human rights attorney. I alluded to earlier that I lived in Tanzania. When I lived in Tanzania, I worked at the War Crimes Tribunal for the Rwandan genocide that took place. And the definition of genocide is eradicating a group of people from existence. And it doesn't have to be 1 million people by machetes or 4 million people by gas chambers and guns. It can literally be eradicating a group of people from existence in law. And that is what's happening right now, every day. Every time you see a headline, even if it's like the 19th bathroom bill headline that you've seen, click on it, read about it. They even try to put in anti-trans legislation into the SAVE Act. If you don't actually, and that got taken out this weekend, but if you don't actually click a bill and read more into it, you could miss sort of the footnotes and how important those footnotes are. But they literally tried to put some of the most stringent federal anti-trans legislation, slip it into the SAVE Act around voting. Okay. So this started in early March. I say positive movement. I just mean it's progressed, right? Not positive, but all 3 bills have moved forward. They've all come out of committee and have been like checked as do pass. So I talked about the one that it would define sex as between male and female. The other one would call out all public bathrooms as being sex assigned at birth only. And we've seen out of Texas, the very first of its kind, a snitch hotline. So Idaho is in the midst of passing a bathroom bill. All bathrooms in the state of Idaho, private businesses and or public, a lot of the ones that you see that are easy to pass are around public bathrooms because they're in government buildings and the government is Republican. So it's very easy for these public bathroom bills to get passed. But what we're starting to see, and Idaho is the first state where now it has criminalized the use of a bathroom. Criminalized. Everything that we've seen to date, including in Missouri and in Kansas, it's all been civil action against them. And in Idaho, it would criminalize it. So again, as a means of genocide, criminalizing, saying it is illegal to be who you are, is the next level up. So the Lemkin Institute, I did a post and a video on the Lemkin Institute about like 6 weeks ago saying that we were at level 8 of 10 in a genocide against trans and gender diverse folks, and that has gone to 9 just in the last 6 weeks. So in Missouri, the bill, again, all public bathrooms, but then this one, the bill giving private schools immunity from civil liability against any bathroom decisions that it makes. New Hampshire, of all states, passing anti-trans and bathroom ban, asserting one's identity. So again, all public bathrooms, a little bit expanded in what they deem to be public buildings here, parks, rest stops, airports, civic centers, municipal facilities. That's an expanded definition of even what was in Missouri. Most extreme penalties right now, as far as civil at $5,000. Right up until this bill, it's been $1,000 fine. So this one is $5,000. But the Idaho criminalization, up to 5 years in prison. Up to 5 years in prison for using a bathroom. And the Idaho, if you Google the Idaho bathroom bill, look up, I forget his name, but someone testified at the hearing, and he's a trans man, big beard, right? And he's like, you want me to use the bathroom of my sex assigned at birth? Look at me. He's like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. If I follow a woman into the woman's bathroom and her husband sees me walking into the woman's bathroom behind his wife, he's going to grab me out from that bathroom and beat me the F up because he's going to think I was following her in there to assault her. Or I could go into the men's restroom and then be grabbed out of there and assaulted and arrested and spend 5 years. So in the Idaho one is private bathrooms as well. So basically the only bathroom I'm safe in is in my home. I mean, the real life implications of this, again, Indiana's anti-trans attorney general, any day now, we're going to see what we saw in Kansas, and it's going to happen overnight. So a supervisor at the Department of Health and Human Services leaked something to Aaron in the morning saying that they're in the midst of doing this in Indiana right now. They're preparing because, when Indiana did it the night before and it went into effect the very next night, a few weeks of preparation happened in advance of Kansas saying, hey, tomorrow, you 1,558 gender diverse folks, your licenses are invalidated. It took a couple of weeks to pull that information. And this really goes to the heart of a lot of conversations that I'm having with folks on the Caravan of Hope in states where, gender marker, you change your gender marker, and it no longer being safe to change your gender marker, then it prevents or stops and or causes hesitancy in folks changing their name. Right? So I met with a couple, and her given name is Caleb, which is gender neutral. And so she was lucky, but we had a whole conversation with her and her wife and 2 kids around changing her name to Sabrina and whether or not she should do that. Yet how she gender expressed, if we were looking at her, how she gender expressed to the world was very male still. And Caleb is a gender neutral name at the end of the day, but Sabrina is not. Right? Sabrina, I see Sabrina and I think female, but then the M will forever be there. In particular, in this particular state, we're in Tennessee and there was no way to update the gender marker. But then for folks where there is the ability to update the gender marker in states, where I'm going to be tomorrow in Chicago, Illinois, because we were through this really bad red state rash, if you will, from Tennessee to Oklahoma to Arkansas and Texas. We were just in a slew of states where gender markers were just legally not allowed to be changed. And so that was what it was. But then we turned the corner and then we're in Colorado where it was allowed. And then I had a different conversation with folks in Colorado of, yes, you're allowed to, but should you? And on the day that we were in Colorado, 2 anti-trans bills. Colorado is deemed as super blue. But when we were in Denver on that day, that evening around 5 o'clock, 2 anti-trans bills were added to the ballot for the midterm elections. And while we were there, I met with a parent and their trans child, and the trans child, I say child, 16. And she was very like, things aren't so bad. Right? And the mom was like, you have no clue. And she's like, but, we left Texas to come to Colorado. Like, we live in Denver. We're fine. And she's like, it's here now. 3 hours later, the news hits. Right? So, again, Indiana, it was leaked. Aaron in the morning reported it. We're going to see what happened to folks in Kansas, in Indiana. And again, how did Kansas do it? It filtered. There's a form. There's a legal form that you fill out in order to change your gender marker. 100% of folks who change their gender marker are gender diverse, whether trans, non-binary, gender diverse in some way, shape or form. A name change, not necessarily. Along the way in the Caravan, we did a name change for a male sex assigned at birth, cis dude who's a junior. Dad's a predator, sexually assaulted minors. He has no desire to be a junior. He has no desire to carry his father's name. So we dropped junior, changed his middle name, changed his last name. He wanted no parts to do with his family lineage, in no way gender diverse, and had nothing to do with his gender identity. A woman who was raped consistently as a child, Bethany, and heard the name Bethany over and over as a child by the person who sexually assaulted her. And she never wanted to hear the name Bethany again, but instead changed her name to Beth. No gender identity name, reason for her name change. So something else that I never did before that I'm doing with all of my name changes right now is I don't state in the name change petition, and all name change petitions, you have to state a reason. 2 to 3 sentence reason as to why you want your name changed. And the judge reads it. And if there's a hearing required in your state, the judge will ask you to state it on the record. And I used to always, I've been doing this for 18 years, people would proudly state, because I want a name that reflects my gender identity, right? Something along those lines. Not one name change did I do this entire trip where so folks are filling out their forms, then they come to me and I look at it without fail. So then we started to have the intake people tell them, don't answer that. Angela's going to help you answer the paragraph, because every single person mentioned being trans or gender diverse in their reason. And then I would make them fill that part out again, saying something like personal reasons. I want a name that reflects my authentic self. I would ask them questions around the name that they chose. If they kept their last name, I asked why, and they said, something about their family lineage that they liked. One guy the other day changed his name to Jack. He's like, there are 12 generations of Jacks. Like Jack has been in my family and I want to keep it. So really important as folks are doing name changes and or gender marker changes, because while with AI, all name change petitions can be read through OCR and fed through and just looked at and said, give me everything that mentions gender identity just through or being trans on the form. So while there's not a form associated that triggers that a name change is for a trans person, if they feed all of their name change petitions through AI, then it would be able to pick out which ones where the reason was being trans. Judges, we only have 15 minutes left. This was supposed to be in the positive one, but federal judge ruled that Aetna has been declined. If you have Aetna as your health insurance and you wanted anything having to do with gender affirming care, it was automatic denial. And so a case went up. It's at the circuit court level. It will likely go up to the Supreme Court. We don't, obviously don't know what the Supreme Court will say, but huge landmark ruling saying that facial feminization surgery is not allowed to have a blanket denial by Aetna. So huge. A judge, the ACLU, filed a lawsuit in Kansas, and the judge refused to issue an injunction against Kansas. So the licenses are 100% revoked in Kansas, 1,558 people. Those caught driving with a license that reflects their gender identity, it's a Class B misdemeanor, and punishable with up to $1,000. Again, that's been the amount, and a 90-day suspension. If they're caught again, then up to a year in prison. All right, so depressing enough. Only good news moving forward. Yay! All right. So this kid from MIT, his parents cut him off for being trans. He had to move off campus. A GoFundMe started, and he graduated. $90,000. He was able to pay off campus housing and MIT, and he will be able to graduate. RFK was stopped from trying to ban gender affirming care for minors. So a federal judge in Oregon has sided with the plaintiffs in a lawsuit against RFK, declaring that the gender affirming care for minors, that his lawsuit does not meet his lawsuit said that it doesn't meet professionally recognized standards. And the judge in Oregon said that that's not true, that the gender affirming care at this hospital in Oregon does in fact meet medical standards. I alluded to this earlier, that Republicans were trying to add sweeping anti-trans policies to the SAVE Act, and that was defeated over the weekend. So the SAVE Act is still, should be defeated in and of itself, but ultimately it wouldn't also go to ban trans healthcare for youth. A school district in Colorado, Jeffco, is standing up to the Trump administration not folding. A lot of school districts have just been folding, but Trump demanded that the school districts stop recognizing trans students and gender identities, banning them from bathrooms, banning them from sports, all of the overnight accommodations, that it's all in violation of Title IX. And Colorado's second largest school district, dealing with almost 75,000 students in 150 schools, said, no, we're not listening to that. So they joined a lawsuit and counterclaimed again. So they're not bowing down, and they're suing the Trump administration back. A university also sues the federal government for threatening federal funding over a trans volleyball player. So San Jose State University got sued by the Trump administration after the executive order went into effect, like one of the very first institutions impacted, because they continued to allow a trans volleyball player to compete on the women's team, and that she's still playing, and they're in the midst of the litigation, but the school was able to jump onto a lawsuit led by a swimmer, Riley Gaines, challenging the NCAA's transgender inclusion policies. So the school has joined that lawsuit because ultimately it has to deal with all of NCAA, of which they're a part. A governor in Arizona, the governor vetoed a bill that would have funded Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA nonprofit. So Arizona Governor Hobbs vetoed a bill that would have given $17 out of the $25 for every single license plate registered in the state of Arizona. More than 2/3 of all of the license plate registration funding would have gone to Turning Point USA, which the main mission in the charter pushes anti-trans legislation, anti-immigration legislation, and encourages students to harass and report left-wing college professors. Like in the mission statement. Just insane. So vetoed, yay. Super cute, gay Filipino athlete. There's this new sport, Hyrox, which is a global fitness competition, which is gaining global momentum and being known more so globally. It's like think of it as a mud runner meets, all of the things combined into one. And so he debuted. Hyrox has been around for several years, but he broke in his very first debut in Bangkok. He broke all of these records, and he had face paint, the rainbow face paint on his face, and so became sort of an overnight sensation within the LGBTQ community. Social media following has exceeded 200,000 from like 55. He's an architect in everyday life, but now he's this like super cute athlete that's bringing a smile to a lot of folks. Chastity Bowick, the executive director of the Marsha P. Foundation, or Institute rather. Data has power. So she has launched the Community Needs Assessment Survey, and for a period of 5 years will be in an open-ended data collection initiative trying to collect information on Black, brown, trans. You can't change, my mentor always said, what's reported can be ameliorated, can be made better. What's recorded and reported, it can be moved exponentially. Okay, so if you're tracking something, right? Tracking your macros, tracking your calories. If you start tracking something, it gets better. If you track it and report it to someone, adding that layer of accountability of the reporting, not just the recording, moves mountains on behavior. So data has power, but first it has to be recorded, and then who do you report it to? Ultimately, so this assessment will guide Marsha P. Johnson's next phase of work. And at a time when anti-trans policies are advancing with coordination and precision, anti-trans policies are moving, as we've said, in lightning speed, it's important to back that up and buttress it with real data. How is this impacting Black, brown, trans folks? The world's oldest active drag king has shaped the art form for decades, and she's not slowing down. So Mexican-American male impersonator, true icon. She started performing in 1965. I mean, over 60 years ago. Just started performing that long ago, 60 years ago. Named Grand Marshal of a Pride Parade in 2024, and named out 100 this year. A subject of an NPR report, and the center of a book. And this book is coming out now, which is what brought her back into the news. But a forthcoming book, and highlighted an entire chapter of a Fresno State professor. The White Party, major LGBTQ organization. I've been to the White Party. It's been going on forever down in Miami. It's a fun sort of circuit party. Mainly, out of 1,000 gay men, I was one of 5 women when I went back in 2010. But it's a super fun time down in Miami. They were not going to have it this year for the first time since 2025. Or 2005. So in almost 20 years, it's 20-year anniversary, or 21st year anniversary, due to funding, just being in Florida, threats, all of these reasons. They were going to cancel the White Party for the first time in over 20 years. They did not. They ended up having it. It raised record numbers, and it, has just been instrumental, especially in Florida, in funding LGBTQ organizations that still exist in Florida and that are still able to operate and do business in Florida. A queer suffragette that no one knows anything about. I didn't know anything about until I Googled LGBT good news this morning, because there wasn't that many, and I had to Google it. But in March of 1912, Ethel Smyth, she was jailed for 2 months for smashing in the MP's windows. And from jail, so she was a conductor, orchestra conductor, and with her toothbrush from jail continued to conduct music outside of her window and conduct all of the prisoners in an orchestra. She was a bold composer of the very first orchestra to ever defy gender norms. She lived openly as a queer woman in 1912, had many relationships with women, wrote about it very bluntly, and she became a dame in 1922, but was later erased as such and had the title removed. And while Smyth is not well known, largely because of her queerness, her memory lives on. And I love this eulogy that was given by a fellow author. A wild welcomer of life, of love, of art. Your hat askew, your soul on a dead level. Rough, tough, uncomfortable, true, chained to the iron railings of your creed. And we end there with Ethel Smyth's eulogy. And perfect timing, 4 minutes to spare. And the next Legal Queer&A is not February 24th. It is April 7th. Yay. All right, so real quick, I'll stop sharing. The one thing that I asked, if anyone was here March 24th, let's see if there's anything. Was there anything in the comments, Jen? Nonprofit clinic, working on opening up in New Jersey, trauma-informed, compassionate care, including gender-affirming care in Hudson County. Awesome. Also good news out of North Jersey. I am on the board of Jersey City Pride. I helped form the Jersey City 501c3, and they are now getting grants, and they're official. Jersey City has been going on forever, Jersey City Pride, but it is now an official 501c3, got a charter from the IRS, we got approved, and they are working on getting grants and doing some big things. I'm trans feminine. I changed my last name to a name that was not my last name, but after I got married, I took my husband's last name, which, should I worry? again, it goes to what you put in the name change. So based on what you're telling me, no. Just on those facts alone that you've changed your last name based on things like that alone, no. But there was a place on the name change petition for you to state why you changed your name, and that again, if they wanted to go through the steps. And that's the other thing. Not all states, like Kansas, have the ability to generate these forms around gender markers. I meant to create the list of anti-trans states where all of these name change gender markers were done by hand. So unfortunately, like in Florida, they don't have the ability in Florida to just click a button and get everyone who filed Form 160 because they haven't been keeping records in data, like in computers, basically. So, and if they have it, it's only been for a couple of years. And so I have a trans surgeon out of New York who goes back and forth to Florida. Florida has no clue she's trans on anything because she did it so long ago that like there is no paperwork that is able to be, found on this woman. Um, so where are you living? What type of computer system and data entry system is that state using or going to or have done? How long ago did you do the thing? So Cynthia, for everyone with that question, I have like more questions that I would ask, first and foremost. March 24th was excellent. Um, so was March 10th. Thank you for that. um, Tell me more on March 24th. Anyone want to share? Would you want to see more of panels, interviews, life experience? Um, uh, the Supreme Court plaintiff in the immigration case that will go towards in my opinion, overturning marriage equality. Sandra Munoz has said she would join and do, an interview. She was there in front of the Supreme Court watching the questions being asked that had nothing to do with her or immigration, that she could, her eyeballs were like this, like that is around marriage equality. How are they going askew here? And even Neil Gorsuch said, like, you're overreaching. How are you making this about marriage equality to his colleagues on the bench, right? And all of this in front of Sandra Munoz, who was obviously sitting there because it was her case. So there are folks that I can reach out to, like Alexander, to interview just about different topics. Alex's was about his lived experience. Sandra is a lawyer. It would be about her thoughts on the Munoz case and how it will be used against marriage equality moving forward and named as precedent. But if anyone wants to share anything else that you'd like me to do with these LQAs that we're not already doing. Shelly, I feel like you have an opinion, and I don't mind calling on you. Because you can take it.
Yeah, I come in really just to listen because I being in Idaho, obviously being a trans mom, all of
Mm-hmm.
these things are pertinent to me. I think that other people coming in and you discussing things with them, I think that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Giving more insight into what's happening out there. I come in here as every Tuesday that I can to your informative breakdown of things kind of takes down the temperature, I think, a little bit. I try to avoid doom scrolling, but I do. And Idaho just is so hard to live in. So I think that all of us, whoever comes and for whatever reasons they come, any inf any and all information that you can give us with the
Mm-hmm.
different people that you've suggested. I know that Lou would come in and talk about different ways to protect yourselves and your community financially. He's
Mm-hmm.
really willing to do that and wants to do that. So I think the more people that you can bring into this space with the more information, I'm all for that. I would love that.
Okay. Yeah, and something else too that and anyone in the school community that is here, I feel as though I've been ignoring you, and not that I feel that I've been ignoring you, but I have been ignoring you because I've just been so busy with the Caravan of Hope. But that is a place where ultimately we can go live any day. Like this is 2 hours a month, ultimately, that is open to anyone who registers for LQA. I think we have over like 6,000 people on the mailing list. The one LQA we did around marriage equality had, over 500 people. It broke our Zoom registration because we were limited at 500. So we had 500, but it would have exceeded that. That was the one time that we went over to 1,000 for 1 month. But also, once I get home, we'll be more active in school and can do so much more in the school community of bringing folks on and talking about all different types of things more frequently. So we have over 200 people in the school community. If you're not in the school community, join it. But that's definitely a place where I think I can leverage more time, like an
Mhm.
hour a week, and interviewing different people and bring, as opposed to the 2 hours a month that's meant to be more macro. But if, someone wants to hear about financial planning and, from an immigration attorney, like as I start to get more micro on things, that the school community is also a good resource that we can use. So, but yeah, I was just thinking out loud as you were talking, Shelley. So thank you. And thank you
Oh,
always for being here.
no, I love being here. I personally, Rowan, my transgender son is living in Portland. We moved him over there last year thinking that it would be safer. It is ultimately safer, but there's no safe space really if we look at um but anything that I can do for anybody, I'm here, but I do just try to sit back and listen and
Mhm.
absorb, you know.
And again, with the school community, because I gave that information to the grandmother I met yesterday, and talking about, the grandmother had to come to the Caravan of Hope because her daughter, in this case, Shelley, right, was so depressed and couldn't get out of bed because of what she's going through helping her trans daughter, Olivia. I didn't mention earlier that the husband is super anti.
Ah,
And they're divorced. He lives in DC, and whenever Olivia gets on a plane, she has to dress as a boy. And for the week
which
that
is
she's
incredibly traumatizing.
so traumatizing, for 4 weeks out of the year, she is with dad and has to be Oliver and dress as a boy and all of, and so to,
Yeah.
you know, it, so mom is dealing with that, and mom is suicidal, Olivia's suicidal, and grandmother is at the Caravan of Hope, right? And Iowa City was awesome. The only trans elected official came through,
She
and
posted it, posted it on the Facebook. I saw
oh,
that.
that was, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
that was really cool.
that was awesome. We had two elected officials come through, one being the only trans elected official in Iowa. One, like, you're like, I knew I was in the minority. I didn't realize I was one of 383.
Right. Wow.
And so, but, they spoke, the grandmother, and so I gave the school community, and all to say, I was like, if you posted something in the school community for support, both your daughter and or you, asking, for other parents of trans, kids, I said there would be folks that would respond, within the community. And I said, then there's also PFLAG. And then the elected official offered up another organization that was very specific to Iowa City that I had never heard of. And the woman was like, oh my God, I never heard of that. That's 4 blocks
Mhm.
from my house. And, so really important, again, to use these communities to leverage one another.
Yeah.
I don't have Shelley's lived experience, right? And so if there's someone else in the community that has trans kids that is going through a difficult time, whose children are, self-harming, or they're depressed and don't know what to do, and they have a co-parent that isn't, supportive, and combating a co-parent while combating the government, while combating, the insurance bills and all of the things, it's very taxing. And then to just be able to hop on a call with someone and or share a message with someone who's going through it or went through it, can really change someone's life. So the school community, that's what that was created for, is the in between, the 2 weeks in between the 1 hour that we get together in a big group like this, and for folks to leverage it.
I'm glad you said that because I tend to be hesitant to use my voice in situations like that because I'm always worried that there's lacking authenticity or who am I to say but I do think that bringing up that I do have a lived experience as a parent of a transgender person so I'm gonna think about that more and maybe use my
Totally.
voice more.
Totally. And you're an ally living in Idaho. Even if
True.
you didn't have a trans child, just living in Idaho, it's like the epicenter of
Yeah.
genocide towards trans folks right now, criminalizing being transgender.
It's
You know,
it's horrible. It's
your
horrible.
news is different than your literal news on your TV. I can't even imagine. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
everybody here, their lived experience is different than everyone else's lived experience. And we tend to, even within the LGBTQ community, oh, but I wasn't kicked out for being gay. Like my parents were supportive, so I don't have the lived experience of. And it's like everything that we've experienced personally and has impacted us,
Right.
right? And so we can't compare to anyone
Yeah.
else's overall lived experience, and it's really important to both empathize with and acknowledge and other people's experiences as different from your own, but to not diminish or delegitimize your own because it may not seem as bad or what have you. And we need our allies. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are now without allies. A lot yesterday with that elected official V, we talked about the kids, like that kid in Denver, trans kid that's like, things aren't so bad. And like the
Yeah.
mom is like my age, and her mom's like, oh, it's bad. Right. And so being 45, it's like, Harvey Milk knew he was going to be assassinated for being gay and, recorded and hid a recording of himself making a statement to be read and listened to if he was assassinated. It wasn't too long ago we were dropping dead bodies at the Capitol steps in the AIDS
Well,
epidemic.
I'm 56, so I went to school in LA with some of my friends were corner boys on Sunset, and they died at 15 or 16, first AIDS victims. So that's my experience,
Exactly.
it's
Yep.
experience being a virgin trying to figure out if I would die from AIDS.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, we all have perspective, but you don't. I don't want to be a fear monger, but I think I do have, like you, something to say or something to add. But
Hmm.
I try to make sure that um, anyway, I think I'll just spend more time on school and maybe interact a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. That would be my big takeaway for today, is to really leverage school for the community that it is, like-minded folks.
Yeah.
Everyone in that community has been on an LQA in some way, shape, or form. They're all LGBTQ plus and or allies. And while doom scrolling, right, like this PowerPoint, I could have kept going on the negatives. And I
Yeah.
was like, Jesus Christ, I got to stop and like turn this in, throw some positive slides in here. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's happened in the month that I've been doing the Caravan of Hope. And that's difficult. And being able to leverage the school community for some positivity and or folks as resources, it's there for all of us. So yeah. All right. I will let you go. We're over time. I
Yeah.
love you guys. Truly. We're hopping on the road
Oh,
now on our way to Chicago. Yay.
travel safe. Travel safe.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you
Bye,
all.
Olivia.
everybody.
I'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye, guys.